format. Each speaker has 20 minutes. Dr. Samia has given 5 minutes extra to Dr. James if he likes to speak for 25 minutes because her presentation will be concluded in 15 minutes. And we do have 1 hour for our Q&A, I think, which is plenty of time to talk about the subject. Are we clear? And everyone is requested, please keep yourself muted if you're not speaking, and no one is speaking other than the speaker in the first 1 hour.
Ready.
Okay, give me the cue, then we'll start.
Ready, Mushtaq.
Thank you so much, my friends. My name is Mushtaq Rajpar from Washington, D.C., and we are so happy today to host this session on a very important subject, the dying Indus Delta and the flood situation in Pakistan and water resources management and water justice or injustice issues in Pakistan. And we are lucky to have a very well accomplished scholars, researchers, people who have really worked in the field on water and on geography and urban planning. So, and today's session is organized by Sindhi Shaam. And so before I start and introduce my speakers, I would like to have the convener of Sindhi Shaam, Sa'een Iqbal Tareen Sahab, to give us opening remarks. And please do share light on the importance of today's topic. Over to you, Dr. Tareen Sahab. Sa'een Tareen Sahab.
Thank you. Noman, may I request you to please put up the graph that I sent you, please? I emailed you. Did you receive it? Okay, thank you. All right. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed speakers and valued participants, on behalf of Sindhi Shaam, I welcome you to this important gathering. Today, we reflect on one of the Sindh's most pressing and historic challenges, the crisis of the Indus River and its delta. For centuries, the Indus has been the lifeline of Sindh, sustaining its people, its agriculture, and its culture. Yet today, that lifeline is in peril. Upstream diversions, inequitable water distribution, and the recurring devastations of floods and droughts have left vast areas barren. More than 18 million acres of farmland lie uncultivated, and nearly about 1.2 million people have been displaced from their ancestral homes, and the delta struggles to survive. These numbers that I'm going to share with you, these numbers have been cited from very credible magazines and publications, including Friday Times. These are 25 numbers, Dawn, UNPO, New Line Magazine, and also ResearchGate. These are some of the resources which from where we've drawn these numbers. So the Indus Delta itself has shrunk about 92% from 12,900 square kilometers historically to barely 1,000 square kilometers today. The crisis is further deepened by the loss of 27 million acre feet of freshwater inflows, once essential to maintaining the ecosystem. With diminished river flow, the sea has advanced inland by about 84 kilometers, salinizing fertile lands and contaminating freshwater resources. As a result, nearly 1.2 million acres of coastal land have become infertile, devastating both agriculture and livelihood. This is not only Sindh's story. That is irony. It's a universal issue. For example, across the world, river basins like Mississippi, the Ganges, the Colorado, and the Nile have faced similar struggles where upstream power has dictated their downstream survival. In many of these regions, cooperation and innovation have produced solutions that balance justice with sustainability. But in Sindh, the severity of the situation has been increasing on a day-to-day basis. So what are we looking forward to this event today? It is our desire and a request that our highly accomplished speakers with great expertise and experience in policy, engineering, watershed management, and climate resilience. They are uniquely positioned to help us connect Sindh's plight with these global lessons. What have they learned from the expertise, how we map them with Sindh's situation, and then they can help us navigate through this issue. And today, I would request all the speakers to go beyond analysis to envision reform. What practical, fair, sustainable measures can secure Sindh's rightful share of water, revive its delta, and safeguard its people? Let us use Sindhi Shaam platform to imagine a future where the Indus once again flows as a source of life and justice, not deprivation and despair. Thank you so much. On to Mushtaq.
Many thanks, Sa'een Iqbal Tareen Sahab. Indeed, I think that is the question, searching for the solution, search for solutions. Where are the solutions? Are there solutions to what Tareen Sahab called crisis in the Indus Delta, and how that has been caused? I think that is the importance of today's session, and we are very glad to have with us our keynote speaker, Dr. James Wescoat, who has worked with the World Bank, who is an MIT professor. In fact, Aga Khan professor at the MIT in US, and we also have Dr. Samia Rab, who has worked in various departments, including universities. She's an associate professor. And then we have Naseer Memon Saab, who really doesn't need any introduction. He writes in Sindhi, in English, and Urdu, and outspoken voice for Indus and water issues. And Ihsan Laghari Saab, who's served in Sindh in different positions, including representing Sindh in the IRSA, which is a water body that regulates water in Pakistan. So we'll begin with our keynote speaker, Professor James Wescoat. Over to you, sir, on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajpar Saab and Iqbal Tareen Saab. It's a real pleasure and an honor to join you here. I'm going to see if I can open my slides.
We can see it.
We can see it. Is it in this presentation mode now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, terrific.
It's not in a presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a great pleasure, and I appreciate this opportunity to share some ideas about the historical geography of complex river basins like the Indus and the focus on Sindh, to put some of these issues in the crisis that were so compellingly introduced in context. And I began my career in the Colorado River Basin on the left-hand side in the western United States, which is one of the most institutionally complex and contested river basins in our country. So much so that it's produced over the centuries what they call the law of the river, that consists of all of the policies developed at different levels of water management over the past 2 centuries. And the principle there is that one can only approach an issue at any one level by understanding how it fits within the evolving law of the river at all other levels. And so the one question for today is, what is the law of the River Indus today, and particularly its influence in Sindh? To address that question in the Colorado context, and more recently actually in Punjab as well, I developed a historical geographic approach shown here. It was part of a semester-long course that in the next 20 minutes we can just briefly illustrate. My story in Pakistan, however, began in the mid-1980s, where I had an opportunity to work with WAPDA on the potential effects of climate change in the Indus Basin. And when I first landed in Karachi, I met an archaeologist, Louis Flam, on the bottom left, who was studying settlement geography in the lower Indus in the Harappan period. He, in turn, introduced me to Mr. Safdar Mehdi at Everyman Books, which I hope everyone knows about, who's visited Karachi.
Professor James, sorry to cut you, but your slideshow is not in that mode. It is only showing your full screen.
Oh, it's not showing this image of the...
Not in a slideshow mode.
Oh,
So I'm not sure if you're changing slides or not, but if you can put them on a slideshow mode, that will be.
now do you see the slide here?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'd like to get rid of the panel. That's what they're saying. If you go presentation mode.
Okay, so let's just go to here. This should be presentation mode, is it?
Yeah, it should be right. You see that little monitor-like thing on the bottom?
Let's just see
There's
here.
a book, open book, and the next one right on right of that. I think that's the icon.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
No problem, no problem.
I'm not seeing the monitor chance to.
Yeah, there you go.
How about here?
There you go. There you go.
Oh
yeah,
Perfect.
much better. Much
Perfect.
better.
Thank you. Thank
Did
you.
that
Yeah.
advance? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
just backing up, this is the outline of the multiple levels of water management in complex river basins, from the largest global and even higher scales of consideration at the top to the more regional and local scales at the bottom. And we consider also time scales from a daily scale all the way up to decades, centuries, and millennia as part of this approach. How about this? Is this a slide of Everyman Books?
Absolutely.
Terrific. Okay. Well, I hope people have visited Everyman Books when it exists there in Sadr Bazaar, because in that location, I found this report, fascinating report with a floral cover titled, quote, "Rejoinder of the Government of Sindh to the Representations of the Punjab and Other Units on the Report of the Indus Commission," dated in 1944, that I'll return to in a few minutes, but I've learned that it was the tip of the iceberg for Sindh-Punjab relations over the Indus. At Everyman Books, I also learned about the Institute of Sindhology at Jamshura and started collecting the works of M.H. Panwar, Manik Pitawala, Mushtaq Rahman, and other historical geographers of Sindh. Now, the historical geography approach begins with the community level of water management, which is early in time and relatively small in size. In Colorado, we developed this typology of prehistoric water communities on the left, defined by differences in climate, terrain, hydrology, and settlement processes. Early settlements in Sindh likewise varied in size, technology, and social organization, from ephemeral spring locations in Kohistan to Gabberbund rainwater harvesting to mobile floodplain farming and larger sedentary urban well and drainage systems at Mohenjo-Daro. These different types of settlements face different types of water-related risks, and they have different strategies for dealing with them. Now, scaling up from the community level to a sub-regional scale, and do you have the map here from the Chachnama? I'm asking if you can see this map of the Chachnama settlements. We read in that history about the 4 regions of the lower Indus. And like many histories, the Chachnama, however, gives us more emphasis on dynastic and conquest processes than on their economic, technical, or environmental dimensions. Continuing to the early Islamic history and a more integrated perspective on the lower Indus region, this map of Ibn Akhal distinguishes mosque towns, market towns, and Muslim towns and the routes that connected them from Debul up to Multan. And we learn from that account about that trade and fishing were prevalent, but so too were the production of rice, cotton, and sugar, enabled by inundation canals, many of them dating to the Sumra and Sama periods. This Mughal map on the left marks the development of a larger geographic scale of the Indus as a basin, from its headwaters to plains and down into the delta. And it's at this point where Abul Fazl begins to discuss the relative contributions of those different subas in which Multan was a major suba. Bakr and Tata were formerly independent sarkars, growing in significance within the empire. But the map again, the Mughal map, once again features military routes and stages. Now, Irfan Habib, economic historian, has produced an atlas of Mughal Sindh on the right, which identifies its major crops in this period, presumably irrigated, though data on canals, surviving data, are very few. His colleague, Shireen Musfi at Aligarh, has plotted the Mughal revenue data from each suba or province in Sarkar. And interestingly, the revenue extraction was higher in Lahore and Multan subas and lower in Bakr and Tata, even though much of this Punjab was still pastoral at this time. The 18th century witnessed once again a decentralization and return to regional autonomy under the Kaluras and Talpur Mirs. We often read in later accounts about their despotism, that is, their exploitation of peasants through annual tax farming, though the official percentages of 20 to 33% were about the same, or in some cases not as high as the Mughal rates. And many aspects of their agrarian system were carried forward by the British. Inundation canals of this period were classified by three types. There were the natural inundation canals, partially man-made canals, and smaller, fully man-made canals for water distribution, along with lift and well irrigation methods. Now, early colonization, prior to annexation, the East India Company officers had a different mission, focused again on navigation, surveying river channels for strategic, territorial, and economic trade opportunities. The British invoked the Roman law of open access to navigable rivers to force their way in, and company officers generated numerous scientific reports on the delta and its river channels and the mainstream channel up the Indus. However, the British mentality changed dramatically after annexation when they surveyed the land and canals for their revenue potential, as illustrated by this map of canals on the left of Chanduka Pargana. And also in the grandiose 1849 Punjab annexation plan for irrigation development on the right. Now, it's fascinating to compare early provincial irrigation in Sindh, Punjab, and other regions like the Western US. And a big difference in the Western US was the development of and definition of private usufructuary property rights in water. That is, water rights that were different from land ownership rights and different in each of the Western states. In British India, the 1873 and 1879 Irrigation Acts, by comparison, asserted state ownership and state control over irrigation channels and waters. Provincial irrigation in Punjab and Sindh in this period had an ambitious but faltering start. The Canal Department was created in 1843, but not sustained. An early flood control project failed. An ambitious Fife regional plan for Sindh was rejected. Sindh's position as a subdivision of Bombay province may have been a factor. That said, by 1873, Sindh's strategy of improving inundation canals began to take hold. That involved widening, straightening, lengthening, and consolidating existing irrigation channels. It led to steady expansion of Kharif irrigated acreage at a rate of roughly 2% annually from 1873 to 1932, when the Sukkur barrage was completed. Less expansion of Rabi cultivation. But Punjab irrigation also expanded rapidly during this period, and the two provincial processes began to compete and be shaped by even larger imperial level of political events, as outlined in these two lists. Can't go into the details here, except to note that initially in the irrigation report of 1901, concerns about potential impacts of Punjab irrigation in Sindh were deemed negligible by the engineers on upstream and down. These concerns resurfaced, however, in the 1919 Cotton Commission report, but flow data were deemed insufficient to address the concerns, which led to the formation of a river discharge committee. That coincided at the higher political level with the Government of India Act of 1919, which established an unsuccessful diarchy system of representation. But it also established that water would be deemed a provincial subject when the provinces acquired an autonomy, which they did not have in this period. A decade later, the otherwise unpopular Simon Commission report addressed growing tensions between major works at Sukkar, proposed works at Sukkar, and upstream in the Sutlej Valley project. And it also addressed prospects for Sindh's separation from Bombay, which ultimately occurred through the 1935 Government of India Act. 1935 was a pivotal year for interprovincial and the imperial scales of water management in the Indus. The Anderson Committee on River Discharge produced its technical report, Flow Data. The new Government of India Act gave provinces more direct authority and Indian citizens greater representation, especially over state subjects like water. Now, some interpret the 1935 Act as designed to obstruct independence purposely, while others argue that it contributed to decolonization. Paradoxically, it did both. Most significantly, the Act laid out a detailed process for addressing interprovincial water disputes in clauses 130 through 133 listed at the bottom of this slide, which Sindh rapidly pursued as a new province. The Indus Commission report that led to that complaint, that led to the Indus Commission, chaired by a brilliant constitutional lawyer, B.N. Rao, who looked internationally for legal precedents. He found that the United States had several decades of interstate water dispute resolution in Supreme Court cases listed on the left. And in that floral report that I mentioned at the beginning, in Sindh's rejoinder to Punjab's claim, the parties debated these U.S. cases in detail. Though the report pleased no one at the end, it enabled Sindh and Punjab engineers to continue negotiating a draft agreement in 1945 and to work on its details right up to March 1947. And interestingly, a key sticking point was the financing of the Sukkar barrage canals. Now, independence in 1947 led to a new scale, a level of water management, the federal scale. And federal here means two things, both the national scale, but also new national-provincial relations where the federation is a federation of provinces or states, as water is constitutionally a state subject in most federal systems of government. India adopted its constitution as a union based largely on the 1935 Government of India Act. Pakistan has taken different approaches from its Constituent Assembly onwards, with variable federal, provincial, and local relations that have affected its water policies. For example, the one-unit policy in 1955 marked a period of centralization that dissolved provincial governments, contributed to the establishment of WAPTA and five-year planning. Gudu and Kotri barrages were completed, but after some time and stresses, provincial governments were reinstated in 1970, with multiple constitutions and periods of martial law regulation and growing concerns during that period about the sustainability of irrigation, drainage, and flood control. The Water Apportionment Accord of 1991 and IRSA Act in 1992 once again altered federal-provincial relations, redefined them, and the 18th Amendment in 2010 dramatically reversed the previous periods of centralization. Before considering its effects, we need to continue scaling up, however, to the international level. At the bilateral level, the Indus Waters Treaty negotiations occurred during that period of centralization from 1952 to 1960. The treaty led to large-scale international investment in dams and link canals that reshaped this largest contiguously managed irrigation system in the world, in which Pakistan became a leading international laboratory for water resources management. From the 2000s onwards, however, tensions have increased over upstream projects on the Western rivers. And that, in turn, has been accompanied by a growth of multilateral and multi-track water diplomacy. So we continue to scale up to the level of multilateral and multi-track international efforts that include numerous IGOs and INGOs, with a short list here. And these initiatives, interestingly, coincide with the emergence of the global level of assessment, particularly on climate and environmental change, beginning 30 years ago, with modeling of the joint effects of water investment and climate change scenarios. And as the map on the right indicates, some of those scenarios indicated upstream as well as downstream impacts. 30 years later, global analysis had advanced to the point where global climate change research supported the scientific attribution of the 2022 mega flood to global climate change in part, and to the establishment of a global loss and damage fund. The Living Indus Initiative was launched, and more. Okay, from this global scale, let's start to rapidly scale back down in just a few minutes. The 18th Amendment fundamentally altered federal water management in Pakistan. WAPDA's role contracted. Provincial irrigation departments have increased in technical capacity for analyzing the efficiency, equity, and sustainability of canal flows and pumping. The diagram on the right, or rather on your left, summarizes the daily flows just for August 8th, when I last checked the website. And these data significantly extend from inflows into the rim stations, routing those flows downstream through Sindh and discharging into the delta. The revolution in satellite remote sensing and GIS water informatics is illustrated in a crop water estimation application in the Sindh Irrigation Department website on the right. So there's a scientific revolution underway, and its contribution to the new Sindh water policy, to water law reform, and to the water crises that were introduced will be key. There's also a comparable revolution underway in metropolitan water management. Now, we're a very long way from fulfilling the water-conserving urban model in this image, but there's a growing awareness of what's needed, and impressive work by the Urban Resource Center, Hisar, and many others in Pakistan. How these visions can be achieved, however, is informed by the community design scale, which is where we began the entire story, by lessons learned in Orangi pilot project sewerage work, the rural support programs throughout Pakistan, Barefoot Architect post-disaster shelter projects, and many others. We thus arrive at in this kind of long-term, multi-scale perspective with a conceptual framework that is developed over millennia in the lower Indus, with connections upstream, internationally, and globally. There are valuable lessons from each and every local place and institutional scale and time period in the law of the River Indus, lessons for addressing current water challenges and the creative possibilities in Sindh. I thank you for giving me some chance to share some of these thoughts, and I look forward to the discussion. Thanks very much.
Many thanks, Dr. James Wescoat. A wonderful historical account. I'm sure many of us would have not listened to this kind of integrated, well-structured presentation. Thank you very much. I do see some questions in the inbox, but as I stated in the beginning, the Q&A will be after the speakers have given their speech. So once again, thank you. And you also were on very much time. You still had 5 minutes, but I'm glad it ended on time. Okay, so we will be moving on to our next speaker. And now I would like to invite Dr. Samia Kirchner. She's a PhD, has taught at the Morgan State University, and she She makes studies and analyzes architecture that contributes to the urban civic identity. She is currently a tenured associate professor for architecture and urban design at the Morgan State University Department of Architecture. Over to you, Dr. Samia.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure everyone can see the slides in slide mode. Can you
That's
see my
correct.
slides in
Yes.
slide mode?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Yeah.
I really want to start with thanking Dr. Wescoat. That was unbelievably informative and educational. Thank you for being here. And I also want to thank Sa'een Mushtaq and Sa'een Iqbal for inviting me to follow a very, very big act. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. I am not a river Indus expert at all. All my publications are focused on the Persian Gulf. I write about port cities, and that is one of the reasons why after Sharjah, I have parked myself in Baltimore, which is another port city, which has impacted port cities across the world because Baltimore's inner harbor redevelopment based on tax incentivized financing, TIF, is a model that has been replicated everywhere. So that is one of the reasons why I parked myself in Baltimore to see if that TIF-based projects for waterfront redevelopment worked out for the city of Baltimore or not. With that research question, I arrived in Baltimore. Before that, I was working and right now in Baltimore, I'm working on urban food systems as an urban designer. That's my specialization. I'm looking at how to transform food systems by integrating urban farming into urban design. And the area in Baltimore that I'm locating myself is the highest plateau at 480 feet above the sea level. And it is also an area that has the largest number of vacant lots in the city. Prior to arriving in Baltimore, I was working on several port cities along the Persian Gulf and learning from the establishment of these cities. I'm not going to go there because that's not the topic of today's conversation, but what really is appalling is that we are not learning from the seascape urbanism that was developed along the Persian Gulf. Instead, we are really looking at the urban development that is happening currently along the Persian Gulf, spearheaded by Dubai. So here in the old city of Deira in Dubai, you can see that the Sabkha or the floodplain is what shaped the city form. And up to a certain point, the city formed respected the Sabkha and did not build on top of it, allowing the fluctuation of the water to be the ebb and flow of daily life. Unfortunately, what Dubai is doing now has become a model for urban development, and even Pakistan was up till recently following the model of Dubai's urban development and proposing a lot of destruction along the river Ravi through the RUDA, the Ravi Urban Development Agency. Hopefully, that has been halted under the current government. It was quite the environmental planning assessment of this project would not have been very good. What I have learned by looking at integration of creating sponges in urban areas is that only when residents have access to see, touch, and hear water in their own neighborhoods will residents become custodians of water. And building custodianship of waterways is essential to mitigating all the different problems that we will be talking about today around the delta, the dying delta that we see of River Indus. These are examples I'm showing from Lillehammer, Norway, which is one of the most spectacular places where everyone learns about the waterways and lives along the waterways, building custodianship. People pick up their own trash as well as the trash of other people's left behind because they can actually see what kind of fish is in the water and what is the daily flow, ebb and flow of water, what is the There are even monitors that show you the quality of water on a daily basis. So having access to that information develops custodianship in urban residents. We used to be in Pakistan, we used to be a former, prior to the development of Pakistan, in the South Asian context of India, we used to be very good custodians of water. We originated urban design for the world. One of the first designed cities, Mohenjo-daro, is currently located in Pakistan. So we used to be very good custodians of waterways, and learning from that, now that I'm in Baltimore, I'm applying that indigenous knowledge onto learning about the watersheds that feed the inner harbor. And again, parking myself in Central Park Heights to figure out how to develop custodianship. And in this, we have launched a project through a Department of Energy grant called the Baltimore Social Environmental Collaborative. It's a $25 million grant. Unfortunately, it's going to end next year because of the change in the government, but we have installed in the last 3 years weather monitoring equipment across the city and piloting with Plantation Park Heights as the urban farm as a partner. All of these weather stations collect air quality, water flow, wind direction, and other water quality instrumentalizations to collect the data around. We also provide service projects to the Plantation Park Heights by engaging architecture and urban design students to creatively create solutions for the problems that the urban farmers are identifying. We even bring, through the concept of communiversity, taking the community, bringing the university into the community. We have actually launched infrastructure where our student work is exhibited so that the community can see it without having to come to campus and look at it and provide feedback on the students' work so that we can identify what solutions that the students are proposing are viable to the community, and then we go hunting for grants and implementing them. So why Park Heights? As I mentioned, it's the highest plateau that is giving water to 2 watersheds, the Jones Falls River to the northeast and the Gwynns Falls River to the southwest. So these are the 2 watersheds that the Park Heights neighborhood sheds its water into. And because it has the largest number of vacant properties, it makes sense that if we absorb stormwater in those properties, then we can have an impact and reduce the pollution into the watersheds. So thinking from the lens of the watershed, at a smaller scale, at a neighborhood scale, allows us to really focus and create partnerships and build trust, which is essential for any mitigation strategies. For the last 7 years, I have conducted all my courses, history, theory, as well as urban design courses in Park Heights, and created partnerships across high schools, urban farms, and community centers. Creating a network of partnership that allows us to really solve the problems that are both social and environmental in nature. We have proposed kitchens so that people can actually learn how to cook the food that is growing, because in these neighborhoods, the primary food outlets were Popeye chicken or McDonald's or Burger King. Nobody knew what to do with kale or squash that was growing on the farm. So we created a urban kitchen so that we could show and demonstrate how to cook the food. And in return, the farmers were also teaching our architecture and urban design students the value of urban farming. So that integration was very important. It really helped that when during the pandemic of COVID in spring of 2020, when the studios and schools and universities shut down, we could actually continue learning because we were given these tables at the farm, so we could be outside and continue our learning. We are conducting water and soil sampling at the farm, looking at what is the nutrient level diversity coming out of filtered rainwater versus simple, plain rainwater versus municipality water. So we are collecting those data alongside and producing a master plan of how different neighborhoods along the Jones Falls can develop that relationship with water so that custodianship is developed all the way. And you can see that Jones Falls is a beautiful river that no one at this point presently has any access to. Neighborhoods do not have access to it. And we are building the first access from Plantation Park Heights via the Druid Hill Park. So the watershed thinking also has pushed me to join the board of the Interfaith Partnership for the Chesapeake. So the Chesapeake watershed is a very interesting watershed because it cuts across 6 states, from New York to Delaware to West Virginia to Maryland and Virginia and Pennsylvania. So this kind of watershed thinking, and also keep in mind that the Chesapeake Bay Foundation gives out annual reports. Pennsylvania thus far is leading in the Chesapeake watershed in conserved land acreage. So land conservation is essential for watershed management. What does land conservation means? Well, in the Chesapeake watershed, we were really, it's about in 2008, somebody realized and formed the Interfaith Partnership for the Chesapeake. They realized that the largest majority of real estate owned around the Chesapeake Bay is owned by faith institutions, churches, temples, synagogues, mosques. So this IPC was formed to really start collaborating with these landowners around the Chesapeake to bring a faith dimension, which is really important for our consideration. And one of the things that Dr. Wescoat did not really share with you, he's also an expert on the whole concept of the right to thirst in Islam. I was really fascinated by Dr. Wescoat's research and got into this myself and found out that in Sharia law, Sharia, the word Sharia itself is literally translated to the way to water. And that is a very profound thing for our conversation as I come back to the issue of saline water and flooding and all the issues that are very central to the way the Indus River Delta is being threatened. The erosion of mangroves that protected the delta and the salination of the land that is pushing starvation as one of the biggest issues along the delta. These are critical issues that have to be addressed through the lens of watershed management, integrated watershed management. And we have to take, as Dr. Wescoat very correctly pointed out, we have to take a very large, zoomed out perspective that what is happening in the Indus River Delta is a consequence of this continuous formation of the mountains of the Hindu Kush and the Himalayas that are creating 4 river basins, 4 separate river basins. One of the river basins that we are focusing on is Indus, but it is highly connected with what is happening on land along the Hindu Kush and Himalayan mountain area, because that's where the water is coming from and shedding into the different basins. We can see flooding as a big issue, but also salination of water, seawater coming into the river deeply up to 60 miles into the delta. where you can see salt water coming in 60 miles. The 70% increase in water salination since 1950s is a very, very serious debacle. And that is one of the reasons why the ICIMOD has started collecting the data and really making it clear that this is number one river system that is under threat through climate change, because the water, the Siachen Glacier and the glaciers are melting faster, bringing in flooding to the northern areas. And the flooding is actually everywhere now, even to Karachi, northern areas and Karachi. So this integrated approach is very important, not at the level of the large scale, but also at the level of the small scale. A few important sources. This is showing by 2030, all the area in pink is under high tide level. And that's taking out a lot of villages along the delta. The canal project, the Cholistan Canal project, which has been quite controversial, is I've been looking at what its impact will be, and it's interesting to note that there will be at least five areas that will be very, very important to look at. The reduction of fresh water along the river Indus, because the water will be diverted up north, and the mangrove degradation along with groundwater and biodiversity that is threatened when the groundwater starts receding very in mass numbers. And also, lastly and not least, but the most devastating is the flooding, because flooding is directly impacting the livelihoods as well as the lives of human beings. Hundreds of people have died in the recent flooding. It has been devastating to see videos on social media of people actually dying, and nobody can do anything about it because the furious nature of the water. So when water is not treated well, it does not treat us very well. The satellite images are quite devastating. The three images to the right are from different parts, from northern area to the middle to the south. So flooding is everywhere along the river, northern areas as well as Karachi recently. There is an integrated river basin management approach developed. What I find in my research missing is an integrated watershed management for Indus River. And that would require hydrological mapping, environmental engineering, social integration of the residents' involvement with custodianship of waterways, systems analysis, and last but most importantly, a mapping of land ownership. What part of the land along the river Indus belongs to the government, what is private, and if it is private, who are the owners? And then direct partnership with the land owners so that we can rejuvenate the principle of regency. Regency is khalifas, producing khalifas on behalf of the waterways. New Zealand actually has a law that gives river the right, and the river keepers in New Zealand can sue landowners if their pollution is entering the river. So those are the bigger picture things that we can start dreaming of in order to safeguard the delta of River Indus and the people who live along the River Indus. Sorry for taking 3 extra minutes.
Thank you very much. I think this was eye-opening for many of us. I mean, the solution-based approach is what is often missing. I mean, there's a lot of good presentation of the problem and analysis, but I think learning from other experiences is what we need. And also, thank you for bringing in a beautiful introduction of Baltimore, which comes to us in news often in different contexts. And these days, DC itself is under federal control, and we are fearing will it be the Baltimore next?
Baltimore
So,
is beautiful. Its people are resilient. They have been marginalized since the day Baltimore was formed under the colonial rule. And they have been very good custodians of waterways. They continue to be. And you just have to come and walk the neighborhoods with me, and you will see the beauty of Baltimore.
wonderful. Now, thank you very much. I think some people have questions, and I also do have one question with you. But as we said, we'll talk about once we have presentations. So thanks again. We'll move on to our very dear friend Naseer Memon Sahab, and I really struggle. How do I introduce him? I've known him for over 2 decades. One of the most vocal and bold voices for the water rights in Sindh, and he writes Sindhi, English. He speaks. He doesn't leave any door unturned, unknocked when it comes to be a voice for Sindh. So, and recently his book and collaboration with Ihsan Laghari has come out. So, over to you, Sayyid Naseer Ahmed Saab.
Mushtaq, thank you very much. Such a pleasure and a privilege to be in the middle of the galaxy of very learned people. Am I audible and my presentation is visible?
Yes, you are. And if you could keep your presentation on the slideshow, it's showing your entire screen.
Well, I was afraid that you'll ask me for that, and I'll have to struggle for that. Let me see if I can really do that. Is it now? No? Oh, gosh. Is this okay?
No, Noman, can you jump in and maybe, yeah, perfect. Yeah, it works. Thanks.
It is? Okay.
Yep,
All right.
it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, very learned scholars, Dr. Wescoat and Dr. Samia. I think very comprehensive presentations have been made. And I'll try to bring in a little more details about the Indus Delta, while this issue of Indus River and the river basin and the conflict of the upper and lower riparian has several dimensions to discuss. I picked up this one because today's theme was about the Delta. And be a little generous to me. Pardon me if you find me a little distracted, because over the last 2 days, I've been traveling so hectic in different parts of Sindh. I guess over the last 36 hours, I had traveled for about 1,000 kilometers, moving from one to other area. So I just returned to my room only 1 hour before. So there might be little omissions. So please be a little tolerant to me. Now, coming to this slideshow of the Indus Delta. I hope it is still visible. I'm so sorry about that. Visible?
Ji, bilkul. Yeah, yes, yes.
And it's changing the slide as well or not?
It did not change. It's just that we were stuck in the first case study of Indus Delta. Are you trying to move it?
I'm trying to move it actually.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of us are technologically challenged. So.
Oh gosh. No, it was doing quite well. And then suddenly, let me share it again. Pardon me for that. I have to stop sharing first and then make a new attempt to share. I hope I'll be successful this time. How is it now?
Yes, it is.
But the irony that it's not changing my slide. Oh gosh. Why is it happening?
Naman, can you jump in and maybe?
Is it changing now?
It's good.
Yes, it did.
See, now it's good. Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Great.
Finally, I made it. All right. Okay. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with this map. Shouldn't be anything entirely new to you. It shows the overall irrigation system of Pakistan, the different rivers and canal system and whatever has been done. Now, when we talk about the ecology of Indus Delta, let's keep in mind what has happened with the Indus River and its ecosystem, Delta's ecosystem, over the last 100 years, almost 100 years. Today, there are, over these 6 major rivers, there are 3 major storage reservoirs. We have about 23 barrages and headworks. There are 12 interlinked canals, all of them located in Punjab province, that's the upper riparian. Put together are 45 major canal command areas with 120,000 watercourses. Now, this whole arena of barrages, dams, and watercourses and everything, they all divert water. Either they store water or they divert water at the upstream. So this much infrastructure actually consumes water before it reaches to the Indus Delta. So just imagine the scale. That's why I wanted to highlight. Keeping in mind that about 80% of river flows in the Indus Basin are actually glacial melt. Uh, some literature says 75, but it doesn't matter really, 75, 80%, and very little is actually runoff generated, but most of it is glacial. And of that, about 80% actually is generated during these 2-3 months of the monsoon. So for the rest of the years, we have very little flows in our river basins. That's the context. I think Dr. Wescoat showed that history, that how this canal system evolved in this region with 1859, the Upper Bari Doab Canal at Madhupur headworks, the English River and the modern irrigation system. This area, this part of land had been actually kind of a laboratory for English engineers to test their skills of irrigation engineering. And they laid out the vast canal systems, they developed canal colonies, and then there's a whole history why canal colonies were developed, how the loyal fighters from Punjab were actually rewarded through this canal irrigation system. Initially, it was told that this system is being developed to confront the famine that frequently visits this area, but then subsequently it was revealed, and many authors from that, I mean, English authors have also confessed that actually partly it was for controlling the famine as well, but then it was for the political rewards to their loyals who fought the battle for the British Army in this region, and then obviously to generate wealth and produce raw material for industry in UK. So that's the whole background. So then a triple canal which had 3 big canals and they were actually river link canals. This was introduced in 1907 and then 50. Now more than 100 years, this area, this river system has been actually diverted. In 1933, there was Satluj Valley project. There were 3 weirs and a number of canals were constructed. I remember with that project, even before that, in 1920s, there is literature available when Bombay presidency, because Sindh was annexed with Bombay, the British engineers representing Sindh actually through the Bombay government, they have been raising objections on upstream diversion on Indus 100 years before. Then came Sakar barrage, then Kotri barrage, then there's a series of barrages. So this is the way how this system actually evolved. Now, coming to the Indus Delta ecosystem, it's among the 40 most biologically rich ecoregions in the world. It's one of the 19 Ramsar sites in Pakistan. I'm sure you know the Ramsar Convention. Originally, it was spread over 600,000 hectares between Sir Creek, which is actually locally called Seer Creek, but somehow in literature it's being written as Sir Creek to the east, and then Pitty Creek to the west. There were about 17 creeks, and only 2 of them now survive, and the rest have been completely abandoned. It holds 97% of mangrove forest in Pakistan. A little bit of mangrove forest is also in Balochistan out of the Indus River basin, but most of the mangrove forest ecosystem is because of this Indus Delta located there. What is the advantage of mangroves? These are the nurseries of several marine fish species. They nurture about 23 species of shrimp and about 155 species of fish. I'm quoting IUCN and WWF Pakistan's reports. So some 70% of Pakistan's shrimp fishery is dependent on mangroves ecosystem. And more importantly, it has a natural capacity to absorb 70 to 90% of energy from a wave. When we talk about the wave energies, keeping in mind that this region Sindh coast is actually vulnerable to tsunamis. We have history. In 1945, we had devastating tsunami in this area. So then cyclones. Now the frequency of cyclones in this area has also increased. They are kind of a natural shield against any potential marine disaster in this area. Then analytical models after the tsunami, again, that 30 trees per hectare in a 100-meter wide belt can reduce tsunami impact by 90%. This was studied in the East Asian tsunami. I guess it started 2004, if I'm not mistaken, when this close to 100,000 or more than that people were actually died in the East Asian countries because of tsunamis. These studies were conducted later on. So look at the advantage of this mangrove ecosystem. They are not just trees. They do a lot. There's a magical tree, in fact, in many ways. Frequency of cyclones in 20th century, Pakistan coast witnessed some 16 cyclones. Not all of them actually landed on Pakistani coast, but they nearly crossed that. Whereas in the last 23 years only, some 10 cyclones have been reported. So you can see the increasing frequency of cyclones crossing this area. Still, we are lucky that no major cyclone has landed on our coast, but danger. So there comes the reference of mangrove ecosystem here. Now it requires certain minimum flows. When we say that why Indus Delta require minimum flows, we have to protect and conserve this natural ecological system. In 1890s, the average annual flows to Indus Delta was 150 million acre feet. Obviously, there were no barrages, dams, nothing. Or there were few, but not too many, 1890s. And now it is actually less than 10 million acre feet. So you can compare these gaps. 150 million acre feet about 100 years back, and now hardly 10 million acre feet, even not 10 million acre feet. Water Accord of 1991 made an initial provisional provision of 10 million acre feet should be released below Kotri barrage. It was provisionally agreed, and then subsequently it was recommended to conduct these studies. In 2005, Government of Pakistan commissioned an international panel of experts to study the requirement of water, and that panel of experts, they said at least 5,000 cusics should go below Kotri barrage every day, not only in the monsoon, every day, because this ecosystem requires a sustained flow of water. It's like human body. You can't have 10 jugs of water in a day, and we tell you don't take any water in next 29 days because you have got average intake of your water. It doesn't work like that. The same applies on the delta ecosystem. So average, not average, but every day, 5,000 cubic feet are recommended by the international experts. And then they said, in 5 years, one flow of, or the total flow of 25 million acre feet, that should be a flush flow so that the silt could be carried towards the delta. So especially this 25 million acre feet was required in addition to 5,000 acres per day. Remember, putting together the annual average requirements comes to 8.6 million acres. Now, this is kind of a benchmark recommended by international experts. Although there are question marks that today, even with having government of Pakistan and Punjab claims that Sindh is so-called, the term they use, wasting water to sea. If it is being wasted really, then why Indus Delta is decaying? So even 8.6 million acre feet is not sufficient in that for that sake of argument. But let's take it as a reference point. Now let us see what is happening with this 8.6 million acre. This is the data of, you can see the graph and you can see the variation. You can see the erratic behavior. There are years, 2004 and 5, you can see the fourth bar, it was 0.2 million acre feet. Before that, at the beginning, 1.9 million acre feet. I'm talking of the whole year's flow. So there are more dry years are in cycle. You can see that there are several years below 10 million acre feet, several years since 2001. I mean, last 23 years. This is the data till 2022. This graph shows that what is being asserted that what is being vested to delta, this is the real flow, and you can see it is less than what has been recommended by international experts. Average flows, the variation is pattern is since 1976 to 1999. During these 25 years, the average annual flow, because that was the wet cycle years, which is being often referred by upstream upper riparians and WAPDA and other who claim that a lot of water is being wasted. They typically refer to these 25 years because these are wet cycle years. There were 40 million acre feet average per year flow. But if you take the data afterwards, 1999 to 23-24, or even you add last 2 years with this year, average flows below Kotli is hardly 14 million acres. It has gone down drastically because of the weather patterns, the upstream diversion. So average flows actually declined by 65% during last 25 years. And if you go into the further details, flow data of last 25 years shows that for 12 years, that is about half of the years, flows below Kotli were actually less than 10 million acres. I showed you the graph. And if you take the benchmark of 8.6 million acre feet, even then, out of 25 years, there were 11 years when less than 8.6 million acre feet water has flown below the Kotli barrage. This is the reality, that every second year is typically a dry year if I take the data of last 25 years. I will skip a couple of slides. Now coming to the another side of the data. 1956 to 61, the data of pre-Kotli barrage, when there was no Kotli barrage. Kotli barrage is the last barrage on Indus system, and it was constructed in 55. There was not a single day with zero flow. Every day there was a certain flow, whatever it was. But now come to the another side, 75 to 2013. There's the highest number of zero flows in Rabi season. 180 days were without a single cusic flowing below Kotli barrage. Now you can see the variation. Taking the Mangla Dam project, the post-Mangla period, zero flows were average 33 days in Rabi season. And when it came Tarbela also, adding Tarbela in the system, there were 81 days with zero flows only during Rabi. So this is the complexity of water availability below Kotli barrage. I'm showing you another data. These bars show the number of days with zero flows below Kotli barrage in 1990. Look at the number of days with zero flows below Kotli barrage. Can you see the year 2000? Out of 365 days, 339 days, there was zero flows. So where is the minimum flow of 5,000 cusics per day? 13 out of 25 years, there were more than 200 days with zero flows below Kotli barrage. So how a delta would survive that? Out of 365 days, for more than 300 days or 200 days, there were zero flows in 13 years out of last 25 years. That's how the Indus Delta has been devastated. Due to the in-season diversion at upstream, flows to the Indus Delta have gradually declined, and data has been damaged irreversibly. Out of 17 active creeks, now we have only 2 active creeks. All others have gone. Sediment supply, which is very critical to stop seawater intrusion. That's also the natural requirement. More sediment goes towards the sea, it creates kind of an embankment that stops seawater intrusion. Now that natural ecosystem has been disturbed because no water is flowing, so no sediment is being transported. Consequently, a study which was conducted 25 years before. I don't have latest number because that was the last data came out through the government of Sindh. That time, 0.5 million hectares, which was the total 12% of the total cultivated area in the entire province, that was affected by seawater. 25 years ago, and the situation is actually worsened because 25 years ago, there were wet cycle years. In the last 25 years, there have been dry cycle years. So at that time, we had already lost 500,000 hectares. That is 1.2 million acres land to the sea. And one report of the same international panel of experts report said that the coastal accretion was 30 meters every year. And different data shows actually different numbers of this, but this is, I'm referring to the international panel of experts now. I'll move quickly. This is what has happened with the mangrove forest. Out of 103,000 hectares in 1990, in 2005, there were only 63,000 hectares of mangroves were available, compared to 103,000 to only 63,000. In the subsequent years, government of Sindh did some proactive plantation, so you can see numbers growing, but this was the harsh reality till 2005. Sediment. Pre-Tarbela years, average 400 million tons. Enormous sediment was going to Indus Delta. And the international panel's report says now this has declined to only 30 million tons. So less than 1/10 of the sediment is being now transported to Indus Delta. So you can imagine how it is negatively impacting ecosystem of Indus Delta. Few more slides, please. Now, what is happening in the deltaic districts of Sindh? Look at the impact. Poverty head count in Badin, which is one of the deltaic districts, is 82%. This is the multi-dimensional poverty index data. Badin has 82%, Sajawal 85%, Thatta 86%, because they've lost their livelihood. They don't have enough food and vegetables and grains to eat. In these districts, because of this acute poverty, the social dimension is open defecation is being practiced by people in 66%, in Badin, 82% in Sajawal, and 58%. The impact is on human development. That I want to show through the data. These are official numbers. I have quoted the report in the bottom. Households having sanitation, Badin has only 25%, Sajawal only 17%, Thatta only 25%. So people don't have sanitation facility. Kacha houses, mud-made houses. Badin, rural districts. 80% of rural household structures in Badin are kacha. In Sajawal, 86%. Thatta, 86%. Look at the terrible poverty that we see in these areas because they lost their livelihood. They don't have incomes. They are barely surviving. This is a testimony that how Indus Delta has been devastated and people are living literally a subhuman life. So and with that situation, there are more projects being conceived. Upper Rajpur wants to construct 3 new dams on Chenab and Satluj and 2 barrages on Satluj to divert more water. They want to create a Cholistan corporate agriculture farm to irrigate 6 million acres of land. While you have seen the delta situation through numbers, and imagine on the top of that, more upstream diversion is being planned through new dams for the corporate farming of over 6 million acres. Isn't it criminal? This is just the graph showing the variation of Indus flows below the Kotli barrage. You can see on the left side, you can see above averages. These are the wet years, and then in the subsequent years, this is the official data that has been plotted on the graph. E-flows, this is E-flows, which some of the people actually do a mockery of it, that why E-flows are required. Now, when Pakistan confronts India, Pakistan raises this argument of E-flows for its river system. So that's exactly what Sindh is asking within Pakistan. So not a different position that Sindh is asking for. Precisely the same position has been taken by government of Pakistan when confronting India on the waterfront, whatever the conflict is going on. Same argument. Recommendation, finally, I suggest that the large scale upstream diversions should be a moratorium, should be imposed on that. In the present situation, Indus Delta or Sindh in general cannot afford it. And then the satellite data should be used to get an updated seawater intrusion data, and it should be made public, let people know that how sea is intruding. Already, Dr. Samia mentioned that up to perhaps 60 miles or so, the presence of seawater has been seen. Yes, it goes up to the Jirak side, Jirak town, even Sajawal town. Delta communities should be declared affectees of water sector projects. This has not been done so far. Only the dam side people have been termed as the affectees. They have been compensated, even partially. But Delta people are not being recognized even as affectees of these water sector projects. That status should be recognized by the government of Pakistan. They are the FIT. They have paid the price for upstream diversion projects for irrigation or power generation. And Indus Delta should be declared a protected area with guaranteed e-flows. This is now critically important. And finally, I suggest an international commission of experts should be commissioned to empirically establish that what the extent of ecological impact of upstream diversion that has occurred on Indus Delta. We find fragmented numbers here and there. We need a proper consolidated data to see that what has happened with that. Thank you for listening with patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Naseer. Again, very thoughtful and very well researched. I think a lot of data. I saw a couple of comments. Some people were asking if the learned speakers could share their presentations with Tareen Saab or with us would be awesome. I don't know if it's practical or not, but if anyone among the speakers so far are okay to share their slides, their papers, I think people would appreciate that. With that, we move on to, again, the Q&A would be after the speeches. So we have one more last speaker, then I think we'll still have 25 to 30 minutes for Q&A. So we now move on to Ihsan Laghari, who has worked in various positions in the education department with the government of Sindh. He is also representative Sindh in the IRSA as a member from Sindh. And he has co-authored a book with Naseer Memon recently, which has come out. Again, he writes very often in Sindhi and different languages, especially different papers. So over to you, Ihsan Laghari Saab. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rajpar sir, and thank you, everyone. And am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
Thank you, sir. And so sometimes laziness works very well for one. So my laziness was that I didn't finalize my presentation. It would have been already very splendidly covered by Dr. Wescoat. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. You made history in 15 minutes. Incredible. It was indeed great learning. And so Dr. Saima and Naseer Saab. So basically, I'll try to cover a few other dimensions, socio-political dimensions of Delta area. And Naseer has very well articulated and told us that the 85% of 3 districts of coastal Sindh, Badin, Sujawal, and Thatta, which are not all that far away from economic hub of Pakistan, and once in South Asia, and one in the Eastern world, Karachi, which is predominantly urban, and Sindh is 54% urban. That area is not only the poorest of the poor, 3 districts in Sindh, but these are the poorest of the poor in Pakistan. And also, ironically, till 1930s, this area was one of the richest area in Sindh, and also we are harvesting for the harvesting people from Rajputana, Jaisalmer, and other states will come. And this is the area where the traditionally Sindh traded for millennia to the whole world, from Spain to every waters that's connected. So how come that area has become the poorest of the poor and is still with semi-democratic structure that Pakistan is facing now, and with so many projects and so many programs, so many international intervention, that area has not developed. Some of other things that we have also we need to look into it is that is the area where, for example, one of the, I don't know what the word I can put for Gudka, which is some type of Rajpar Mushtaq Saab may rescue me on. I am not able to find a word for it, which is usually taken by the most of the people and women and men, and which causes cancer, which is so dangerous to health. But it produces for the law enforcing agencies, other which control the drugs and other monthly of millions of rupees to be so that drugs reach common poor people in that area. That is something which is causing slow onset death, along with malaria that has not been talked about. Since 2022, the rate of malaria in this area has multiplied phenomenally. So these are something that we need to understand the life and death of the this delta area. Delta is not only Sindh's delta, it's world's delta, it's Pakistan's delta, and delta is the mouth of the river, which makes sure this integrated water resource management, a watershed management, all the theoretical and philosophical talks that we talk about and the experience over the period of time that we have taken will only be completed through a river which has a beginning and which has an end. So how come this Indus River management system can uh, cannot look into the details of maintaining delta? Now, something I think we need to, as a Pakistani in Pakistan, we need to also unlearn between engineering and non-engineering things. Have the worldview between the center and the people in the upstream is engineering centric. As Naseer said, that everyone, not only in Punjab, says that water is going west to the delta, but the landlords, bigger growers in Sakhar Barrage, in Guru Barrage, and might be in Kotri Barrage, specifically will say that we need to cultivate our lands, why to send water to delta. So the survival of delta is survival of Pakistan. This must be understood. This must be made into policy by the people who govern Pakistan. And until unless that is not done, every development initiative cannot get results. Without survival of delta, Karachi cannot survive. Without survival of delta, the Kinjar, which supplies 85% of the water for the urban Karachi, cannot have a drinking water. So these are some important things that we need to understand collectively. As Dr. Samia very well put the point of integrated watershed management, we have policies, National Water Policy 2080, as Dr. Wescoat showed us, that National Water Policy formed in 2018, 2023, we have Sindh Water Policy, both talk about integrated water resource management. But where's the implementation? How come this implementation can miss this whole dialogue? I go back to 2011, but before that, I want to go back to 1999, when a cyclone struck in Badin, Chattan. At that time, Sajawal was not a separate district, so that area. And in 1999, we were working on this national drainage program. I was a junior officer, and one procurement specialist was from Canada, of Pakistan origin, but Canadian. His wife telephoned him on landline. Of course, at that time, this mobile was not all much, but that I am seeing, and there are news that a cyclone is going to hit Badin area. I see your proximity of Hyderabad city to that Badin area. And are you safe in Hyderabad? And please, if you are not safe in Hyderabad, make sure that you are at a safer place to save yourself from cyclone, 1919 A2 cyclone. This was 3 days before that cyclone hit and killed more than 1,400 people in the coastal area. At that time, we have limited national television and radio. Nobody bothered to inform those people on time when most of the world knew. It happened in 2003 and it happened in 2022 even. So when we were focusing on urban flooding and there was time to save the people, it was not done. So this is the deltaic area, which is seen the floods and also seen the droughts repeatedly in same year period. Now, coming back to 2011 floods and the southern area and also deltaic area. And we found out, because I was in a way, I was managing director of Sindh Irrigation and Drainage Authority, and we were trying to evacuate water from the 7 to 6 district of southern Sindh, and including Sagar, Mirpur Khas, Badin, parts of Tando Maman Khan, parts of Hyderabad. And then we also found that specifically how the waterways have been blocked. And we found out there were more than 360 places in development works through canals, through railway lines, through buildings, through roads, which actually hindered and encroached the natural waterways which should have been provided. Means the development in Sindh and Pakistan is increasing the impact of the calamity and impact of the floods. So this is how the investment that goes into the development in post-2010 floods or post-2022 reconstruction that is not streamlined with the people needs and socioeconomic conditions and reality of the ground. So there's something we collectively need to do differently. Otherwise, this area has to suffer repeatedly. Now, the model, the worldview between people of Delta, Sindh, and the centric center and the upper riparian is different. The center and technocrats with the federal government, including Wabra, thinks that the engineering solutions by diverting all the water is the only way to the success and development of Pakistan. And if we are trying something differently, then it means the development is not possible. That is the very specific worldview that they have, and consistently, though internationally under some living industry type of projects, climate change, COP commitments, and climate change policy, national water policy, and other documents may talk differently, but in their orientation and in their practice, they believe that there is only one thing, that is engineering solution, and that can deprive if some water is not able to go to into delta, it makes no difference. So that's the different worldview that need to unlearn. Even for the upper riparian, it will be drastic, as Dr. Saima rightly said about the Ravi project development from Lahore. Environmental flow is essential for all rivers, including Ravi, Sutlej, and Jhelum, Chenab, and Indus. So we have to think differently. Now, there is important thing this to whole debate, that is the governance thing. The governance of the water has to be done differently. There's an elephant in the room that it's not only about the corruption and the level of ill planning. It's more about it. The direction of water projects and direction of programmatic approaches for urban planning and for the rural drainage, we have to think differently. Intensely enough, as Dr. Wescoat and Dr. Saima told us, that right from Bonaire in Kepi to Karachi, there was flooding. And one of the key factors that has came in front of us is the spatial planning or the land use planning, where we have failed consistently. And even if we are going to invest a lot into that, we'll be not able to find out ways for the poor people of Pakistan. So 3 or 4 important Rukesh submissions are that we need to unlearn the development paradigm for Pakistan. The development paradigm has to include people. These are the first responders. They understand far more importantly when the people of Badin was saying that LBOD is against the natural flow, it will cause damage. It caused the damage. When something at upper region is being built in Dasu and other, they said that it will fail, though things are failing. The indigenous knowledge is science, and we need to include people into the development. We need to include people in the discussion, not merely doing our things by say advisories or by publishing of or notifying the policies. One. And second thing is that water and environment and climate change, that has to be rooted through the primary education so that the common sense and understanding of nature is developed within every person in Pakistan, understood correctly. And so the solutions are not found only in the engineering embankments and other things, nature-based solutions, the green roofs, and there are so many things that world is doing, and countries even poorer than us are doing that. And the last thing that we need to also discuss openly about the dimension of the trust deficit in distribution of water. The trust deficit between the provinces, the trust deficit between the political, social, and philosophical causes of the trust deficit that has to be unpaid. That has to be linked with the distributive justice. That has to be linked with the rights, both historical and constitutional, and that has to be linked with the poverty and women. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't prepare any presentation. I think we all are open for the questions now. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ihsan Laghari Saab. I think you brought up also a perspective which so far perhaps was missing from the discussion, especially the governance. And a kind of sickening poverty that you highlighted, and even Naseer. And 1 hour 35 minutes into this session, and I feel more upstream water diversion projects seem to be like ethnic cleansing of the people living in the coastal belt of Sindh. This is very disturbing, and I think we all need to do something about it. And I was just thinking, since Dr. Makbul Haleput was also here, who's the president of Sindhi Association of North America, which is our collective community organization, I wish we could take this discussion on the ground in Karachi, and we could do a similar, especially, I mean, the perspective Dr. Samia brought up, that, you know, the rivers, the deltas, and the lost land could be reclaimed, you know, by new solutions. And I think civil society, people like us, need to act, you know. So I think this is a wonderful session today. At least I learned a lot. So we'll start with the questions. I do have a lot of questions, and I'll start with one that I have received, and that question is directed to Dr. James Wescoat. The question is, sir, to you, from your comparative studies of river basins worldwide, how does the Indus River dispute differ in its historical and political complexities? I repeat my question. From your comparative studies of river basins worldwide, how does the Indus River dispute differ in its historical and the political complexities? To Dr. James.
It's a great question. And in comparative research, we look for both, we look for similarities, differences, but also analogs, things that might be made that are not exactly similarities, but might be worthwhile comparisons. The Indus stands out in terms of difference for the depth. So we have millennia of development in the Indus, whereas in our North American context, it's centuries. And those millennia of experience tell us about all kinds of periods of previous flooding and adjustments to flooding and so on that may offer a richer body of evidence and inspiring examples or cautionary examples. You know, for example, you read back in the earlier period when Tata was in the Delta context. So there have been earlier periods where the Delta was far inland compared to at present. And that doesn't take away from any of the kinds of distress and suffering or the need for, you know, greater environmental flows to the Delta, but it's a cautionary lesson from the Indus. I think the Indus is also, this stands out for some of the record of attempts at regulation and adjustment that have been made, which offer lessons within Pakistan. I'd like to just pick up with a final point that I think there's great potential in what Mr. Laghari just said about the role of societal education. For example, we've really, talking with LUM's education community and Al Khan University, thought, what if Pakistan studies were to have an Indus core to it, where all the different dimensions of Indus, with it doesn't, even the scientific and mathematical aspects of calculating flows and impacts and assessment, but also the historical and cultural, were all kind of woven together in 12 years of curriculum. What a difference that could make over generations. And we really have to think of solutions generationally, because these problems have developed over decades to centuries, and solutions will require a similar type of commitment. These are just some initial thoughts.
Thank you. Dr. Samia, if I could ask you, I mean, your work deals with, in a way, with urban area, right? Baltimore surroundings. And we're talking about Sindh's deltaic region, you know, Badin and Tata, both are, you know, as the speakers highlighted, extreme poverty, displacement. And I have personally been there, honestly. I've seen people, their graveyards gone into sea. You know, people have nothing left to mourn, you know. Even the KT Bandar, I don't know which one, is the third one or the fourth one, because two already have gone into the sea. And land mapping question in such an area could be very challenging. And so if you were to replicate or, you know, employ this practice and experience into Tata and Badin, how would that look like? Is it a fair question even to ask. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely fair question. And I'll tell you why it's a fair question. I'll give you a little context. I teach at Morgan State University, which is a historically Black college. When I joined it, literally at my interview, my dean asked me, "Have you ever taught at a HBCU?" And my question to her was, "What is an HBCU?" Because I had no idea what an HBCU was. And when she told me the acronym, Historically Black Colleges and University, my next question to her was, "Are they still needed?" And she said, "Oh my." And I knew I blew my interview. I knew that I was not getting that job because I had no idea. The arrogant me had not done my due diligence to figure out where I was applying. I just knew that it was a very low-ranking university, the only school of architecture and planning in the city of Baltimore, and how could they not want me with my credentials? So I never prepared for the interview, and this is how I blew my interview. I still got the job, but what I'm saying is that my students come from the neighborhoods where I'm working now. And 70% of the city of Baltimore residents are African American, and they are in the lowest percentile of the state and the countries. They are 11% lowest percentile of annual incomes. And yes, poverty is here, homelessness is here, starvation is here as well. It's not only Pakistani phenomena. There is, I have learned so much that, 3 years ago I had an existential crisis. And I was like, if I was going to solve all of these complex problems, why did I even leave Pakistan? Because it's the same problems here. I didn't escape any of the problems that you are facing. I'm just now here and facing it with my students and connecting my students and their families to educational material. And I think that earlier question was a very good, astute question that led to curriculum refinement. I totally agree with Dr. Wescoat that curricular integration is very, very important. As I mentioned, if you can see it, if you can touch it, if you can hear it, if you can play in it, you will be a good custodian of waterways. And then you will not be asking, did Sindh deserve its water? Did anyone hold its water? It will be a collective. How do we keep the water alive? Because water is what keeps us alive. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you very much. I do have a few more questions, but obviously, let's go to Sa'een Khalid Hashmani Sahab. He lives in my home state, Virginia, and moved to US, I think in 70s, 80s, been here for a long time. Sa'een Hashmani Sahab, please unmute ke upon ke and ask your question. Sa'een Khalid Hashmani. Sa'een, unmute. Yeah, you're audible now.
Thank you. It is wonderful to hear so many speakers on a subject which has been with us for many, many years. Particularly, Delta is the key to the health of Indus River and to the water system. And of course, now it is going to be there's a potential of it becoming an international problem with India's action on holding the treaty in abeyance. So my question is that we have heard Dr. Naseer Memon many times. He has been our guide. He has been our sort of a person who has educated us on the true data. Today, when you discuss this problem of Delta or Indus Delta, everybody says, where is the data? Who supports you? What are the references? And of course, we have always diligently, every time we go, we take Naseer Memon and Ihsan Laghari Saab's data and give it to them. What we are really looking from this great seminar, which I think is one of the rare, where we have got experts from local universities and experts in the water who have at least familiarity with the Indus Delta problem, and joint meeting, we are learning from each other. My question is, is our contention, or is the data that Naseer Memon is quoting, is that verified that Sindh is not getting its due share? My another question is there is a real serious water theft happening, which is having some impact, maybe not drastic, but some impact on water reaching delta? Is there international verification? And if there is a material, I have searched with the AI engines and everything, and I don't find a lot of international material. I find a lot of material by Sindhi authors and Sindhi experts, but not, and of course, opposing material. I find the people who do not agree with Sin's point of view. So, Dr. Wescoat and Dr. Saima, what is it, Samia? Is this valid? Our concerns are valid, or we are really, not based. Our views are not based on facts. Thank you.
So whoever can jump in, I think primarily seems like questions targeted to Naseer Memon Sahab, and then if other speakers.
Actually, my question is to international experts.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
No, I think these are good questions, but they're somewhat different. The questions on the deltaic ecosystem and viability, I think there's some confidence, a lot of confidence in the some of the analysis that's been done, and a more kind of scientific research. What was mentioned with respect to the interprovincial relations is partly related to the trust confidence. But when we look at the historical evolution of measurement, empirical measurement and its development, it was only 100 years ago that we had no measurements. And the Anderson Committee. So when you look now, when I went to the Sindh Irrigation Department website on the data from the RIM stations to the different canal commands and so on, daily data available to all. Now that they can be disputed or questioned, but that just wasn't available at all several years ago. One thing that would be a real advance would be to have some of the positions of the different representatives in addition to the journalistic outputs, to have the scientific publications that go through peer review that would then be able to kind of take the discussion to even the next level. But what's happening with respect to scientific measurement is a true revolution right now. So we're in the middle of it, and one wouldn't want to judge the future by referring to failures of the past. It seems to me. I hope that's helpful.
I can definitely chime in as well to answer. And I've tried to do that in the chat as well, because Mr. Khalid Hashmani Sahab also asked the same question. I think that we need to, first of all, theft, right? Theft requires a law, right? So what is the water law? How much water should every province get? That's a legal issue. And I think that what I'm proposing is that we need to kind of have a lens from the perspective of the watershed. We need to, it's a subtle but very, very profound shift that I have experienced with my work with the indigenous people, the Susquehanna people and the Piscataway people who were really, really, really good custodians of waterways. What I've learned from them is that they don't think about what is my right. They think from the right of the water, because they know that the water, if it becomes poison, they are the ones who are going to die. So I'm trying to navigate a shift inside me from thinking about my rights to water to what is the right of water. And that's the lens with which we need to answer these questions, because we need to then start plotting what is the flow of fresh water. So it's not about is Sindh undergoing theft. It's about what is the flow of fresh water we need to keep the salt water out of River Indus. That's the research question. It's not about theft. It's about what do we do scientifically. And again, science, the indigenous people were scientific people. They didn't have the monitors, but they were much more intelligent than us with monitors. So we need to recognize that now we have monitoring devices, which they didn't have, but we need to put the lens, the way they looked at their relationship with the natural world. That's the lens we need to put on and use our monitors to ask the questions that are related, that are from, as if the river is asking that question, right? Not as if we are asking that question. My right was, no, it's not about my right. It's about what does it take to keep the delta alive? It's very simple. It's 8 principles for a healthy delta. Now let's do the cooperation. And again, for me, the starting point is let's figure out who owns the land along River Indus, a massive database of land ownership. Once you know the land ownership, which we do for the Chesapeake, that's when we started creating the interfaith partnership, because majority of the land is owned by faith-based institutions. Churches are the largest land owners along the Chesapeake. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a board member of the Interfaith Partnership of Religion, representing Islam and going from mosque to do the green training. That's what IPC does. We send our green teams to all religious institutions, so their parking lots, their land becomes more spongy and absorbent so that it doesn't contribute to the watershed. So land ownership map is absolute prerequisite to knowing, what partners do we need to do this? Without knowing who owns the land, we do not know what is the partnership we are looking for. And I'm talking about all the way from the contested area of Kashmir to the Delta, the whole thing.
Thank you.
Dr. Samia, there's one more question from Leila Mattis, and she's asking you in particular. It is the seawater rising across the globe causing the seawater encroaching the mainland.
So that's a very good question. And Lala is my class fellow. So thank you for joining, Lala. Thank you for coming in. So what is seawater rising? How is the seawater rising? Seawater is not rising. The glaciers are melting and the rivers are putting more water into the sea. Plus, we also have the phenomena that Dubai started of island making. So when every country starts making islands, we are putting rocks and sand into the water, which also displaces water. So the seawater is rising for many, many different reasons. The ice melting, the land reclamation projects, all of that is significantly creating what we call seawater rising. The seawater itself is not rising. The seawater is being displaced. And then it comes inland. And that's what we call seawater rising. Does that make sense, Lala? I hope it does.
Thank
So
you.
what I'm saying is the
go
quantity
ahead.
of the seawater is not increasing. We are just displacing it. So it's like when we take a mug and it's half full of water and we put ice in it, it level rises, right? But we have put ice in it. That's why it rose.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Naseer and Sa'een Ihsan one question. Like the quantum of water that is required to be released downstream Kotri, we are relying on a lot of data, which seems to be like decades old. International panel last time was 2005, which is again 20 years back. Naseer, Sahing and Ihsan Sahab, why can't like government of Sindh like hire or allocate some funds to create that kind of like every second year or every 5 year renewed research study on the amount of water which is needed, And so, like, what is really missing? Do they not understand the importance of that kind of study, or what? What's your take on that?
May I comment on that?
Okay.
Please do.
Yeah. I think the water requirement below Kotli barrage to sustain Indus Delta, that study does not need to be carried out frequently. That study has been done well, that has set the basis of requirement of fisheries, of forest, of human requirements. The international panel of experts have done a very good job. The missing part is actually the data that need to be continuously updated is the devastation of Indus Delta. How much forest lost, how much land is under sea, how much water has moved towards upstream. Water samples could be taken on a regular basis in different seasons. That could be done on a more regular basis. And for example, the land went under sea, that data of the government of Sindh is now 23, 24 years old. And I've been repeatedly requesting government of Sindh, why don't you update it? What's wrong about it? This data is now easily available. You can use satellite imageries now. You don't need everybody to walk in the villages and towns to gather the data. You can find the data through satellite imageries. So there is kind of a lack of seriousness, unfortunately, on that part to measure the impact, negative impact, the degradation, and updating that data regularly, which is, I think, is the weaker link. Thank you.
Thank you. Sa'een Laghari sir, would you like to add into that, or we can go to Dr. Samia? Her hand is raised, and then I would, because we have only 3 minutes left, then the end I would request Sa'een Iqbal Tareen sahab to offer a vote of thanks. But before that, Dr. Samia, please.
Please, Sa'een Laghari, please, if you have something to add to that important conversation, please do.
Well, I think one thing that is very important that we missed in our discussion is the quality of water. And that is something that we need to focus. And quality of water for Delta and the people of lower Sindh is horrible. This is something that when quality is compromised, it means quantity itself is reduced. So you have lesser water available. It means the quantity will reduce in its volume, which can be used effectively. So quality, I think, is even bigger question in the Indus water resource management than the quantity. And the other thing is that the problem of theft is more about elite capture. Theft it's not theft. The powerful is using more water, whether he's Punjabi, he's Sindhi, he's Pashtun, he's Urdu speaking or otherwise. Any person, the direct outlet, why should a direct outlet shouldn't be have a rotation plan or other things, which means a person with power has access to water. So all the water accounting systems which are not accounting correctly, they are favored, tilted for the people who are in the power in this whole dynamics. So they are not trying to making it efficient water measurement, measuring and auditing system. So because they are carrying the chunk of the water, 92% is used by agriculture, and most powerful people use that water, whether in any province they are. So that is another dimension we need to discuss further in our next Shams evenings. And also the water quality is something we really missed today, but we need to discuss that. Thank you.
If I may add, I totally agree with that. And that is why I raised my hand that this is not just about the fresh water inflow. That's very easy to monitor. It is about water quality, the nutrient and sediment loads in the water. And that is very labor intensive task. And that is one of the reasons why we launched our citizen science and participatory action research projects. So we are really engaging the residents who don't know anything about science, but we are turning them into scientists. The $10 kit that you can get to sample your water is very easy to use. It's just about creating pedagogical structures so each citizen knows why they are monitoring the water quality and how they can do that and input the data live. And that's the beauty of being a connected world. Everyone is using, all of my community residents are using their cell phones to the equipment that we have put in neighborhoods. They are just inputting it directly into this, and we don't have to do that. We just create the cloud area, the infrastructure where they input the data. But water quality data is essential, not just the flow, but also the water quality. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much. Before to Tareen Saab for vote of thanks. Saeem Makbul Halabrada Saab, are you there? I was thinking if Sana could like do the next follow-up, in person in Karachi on this, we'll be very much happy to support or to be part of it. And maybe, take Samia and Wescoat to the Tata and Badin and let them see the destruction. I mean, obviously, you people have been there, but I think we need to revive this discussion because people in those areas, be they politicians, MNAs, MPs, they don't talk. Believe me. I mean, how many times you would have seen National Assembly, Senate of Pakistan, or Sindh Assembly talking about the losses the community has suffered. So I think, if Dr. Halepur is there, I would like to have his comment. If not, then
Mushtaq, आवाज अच्छे में मुझे बताएंगे.
जी साईं बिल्कुल.
Thank you. So thank you very much. First of all, thank you for arranging such an amazing webinar. I think everybody who spoke today is a master of their field, and they've talked about all the different aspects. And just to put things in perspective, Sana had arranged a conference in Karachi in January of this year, of 2025, on the same topic about, but it was actually, we were not talking about the delta as much. We were talking about the canals, and Naseer Saab was the spearhead behind that. But as the speakers have talked today, it's all connected. This whole ecosystem in Pakistan, from the glaciers to the delta, and how it affects the rainfall and how it affects everybody. So if there are people anywhere in that region who believe that they can destroy the delta just because they live in north up in the mountains and will not be affected by it, are very sadly mistaken. And we've raised this issue multiple times. And I've personally been to Keti Bandar, which, as just to give you a little bit of, Keti Bandar was the primary port in that region, even long before Karachi was born, created. In fact, the history is that when Karachi was created, the revenue from Keti Bandar used to was used to sustain the financial needs of Karachi for decades, because Karachi was a new port being developed by the British, and long before that, Keti Bandar was the main port in that whole region. Now, if you go to Keti Bandar, there is, it's almost completely inundated by the erosion of the sea waters. So this is happening right in front of our eyes. My village is, I come from Tandwalayar, but we have my maternal grandmother was from a little town very close to Badin. So I have family that lives there, and I've seen this devastation that is happening everywhere. Kudos to Dr. Naseer, Memon, who's been the lead in raising this issue, and Sana has. And in fact, we are having a convention next week in Houston, and our theme for this convention is "Let the Mighty River Indus Flow," because this literally destruction of the lifeline of millions of people that live in that region I call it an exercise in mass suicide, Literally, what we are doing is we're not only committing, killing the flora, the fauna, the forests that depend on the river. We literally are eventually going to destroy ourselves, our culture, our history, everything about that region. And what people have to understand, this affects the culture. I was other day I was talking to somebody, and the two of the top recent poets of Sindhi were Ibrahim Munshi, who was from the area of Badin, and Sheikh Ayaz, who was from Sakkar. They both have sung their love for Indus, but in a very different way, because Indus, its effects on the culture of northern Sindh is very different than the culture of Lard or the lower Sindh. So we are committing a mass suicide, and we're completely blind to it. So no, Sana will continue to speak as powerfully as we can, because this is it's our livelihood and it's our survival. But thank you very much to all the speakers and the organizers. This was truly an amazing webinar, and I think we need to continue to raise awareness as much as we can. And also we need stronger advocacy, not only locally, we need it internationally, because as you know that this is not just a regional problem. It's an international problem, because environment is an international issue. And as human beings, we've already destroyed our mother, Earth, and we cannot afford to continue to do what we are doing. So we'll do everything possible from Sana. I'm sorry if I took too much time.
Thank you very much. Dr. Samia, do you want to say something? Okay. Now,
Absolutely.
vote of thanks, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you so kindly. Appreciate that. I think this has been a wonderful, highly educational session. I think thanks to Sindhi Shaam platform team for the mission of this platform is to collaborate with anybody that has the human rights dear to them and their heart. And I think Delta issue is basically a human rights issue. And also learned a lot from both Dr. Wescoat and Dr. Kirchner. What Samia did was, I loved it. She is trying to do the reverse engineering by focusing on the water itself, the rehabilitation and restoration of the delta. It was very creative, very innovative, and I think our mission is to bring these kind of issues to the front burner of the public discourse, and we'll continue doing that, collaborating with SANA, collaborating with other international organizations, and I thank all the speakers, participants, and guests. Thank you so kindly. We'll continue serving as much as we can. Appreciate it. Mushtaq, thanks for your leading this whole session. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our session.